Guys who married Bridezillas, what happened after the wedding? My mom was a mother of the Bridezilla. She's an alright lady generally, with her annoying habits here and there, but damn. Woman cried because we refused to have a receiving line. We got married in our backyard. The reception was on the other side of the yard. Why the shit would we have a receiving line? She was beside herself for the better part of an entire year, worrying what we would do if it rained. We had a giant tent, and ordered like 20 umbrellas. She also had a cow that the hem on her dress had gotten pulled loose by the ridiculous rhinestone stiletto she chose to wear. To a wedding in a yard, on grass. I told my ma to get her some duct tape, and my mother, again, cried her eyes out. To this day she complains about the fabric runner we used for the aisle because her heels dug into it, saying how silly of a choice that was. Everyone in the wedding party was aware of it, and wore wedges or flats, but she snorted that that wasn't elegant. She loathed that I wore ballet flats. She was also appalled that for our rehearsal dinner, which was at our home, since that's where our wedding was, consisted of takeout from our favorite local pizza and sandwich place, and the rehearsal itself was all of 10 minutes. She decried it for being borderline trashy. Thankfully, following the ceremony, my brother gave her a joint and all was well and happy for the party thereafter. Brother of the year. Lol. Honestly, it's your party day, not hers. You do you. I married a Bridezilla. He is a lovely, sweet, thoughtful man, but boy did he lose it surrounding the wedding. I could have been married with about 3 special people there. He needed 200 plus. As far as I was concerned, we could eat off paper plates and napkins and have a big bonfire to burn them afterwards. He need personalized moist towelettes. You get the point. He is a lovely person and I love him dearly, but I will never marry him again. As someone who worked at a women's formal wear shop in one of the wealthiest suburbs of Dallas, dear lord do I have stories. Edit 2. Wow. Thanks so much for the awards. Edit sorry everyone, I had to go back to work, not at a formal wear shop, and didn't realize this would blow up. The store I worked at was a women's formal wear store, so I have plenty of Bridezilla, prom mom and pageant mom, a whole different breed, stories. More than once we had mothers physically fighting over dresses for their daughters, including 2 moms who were sisters and came to blows because their respective daughters ended up wanting the same dress. It was sad because they all came in together for a prom shopping day. It ended with them being thrown out and banned from the store. Then there was the crazy pageant mom who walked herself into the back room where the special order gowns were kept and hid all the gowns for girls in the same pageant. The store worked very closely with various pageant organizers, so it wasn't unusual for us to dress every girl in a pageant. This mom found the rack for her pageant, took the tags off every dress except her daughter's, and mixed them into other random special order and restock racks. It was a huge store that did tons of business, so the back room was just covered in racks and racks of dresses. If someone hadn't seen her leaving and checked the surveillance cams to see what she was up to, we probably would not have found all the dresses. The worst moms who weren't bitchy rude moms, so many of those, were the 40-something yoga moms who'd spend the entire time body shaming their daughters. There was even one yoga mom who, instead of playing chaperone while her daughter and her friends tried on dresses, spent the entire shopping day trying on prom dresses herself, and telling her daughter's friends how if she went to their dance everyone would totally mistake her for a student. Mind you, her daughter and friends were like 13 years old and shopping for a junior high formal. None of the girls ended up finding a dress and the lady's poor daughter looked near tears the entire time. Thankfully she came back a week or so later on a school night with an older lady, grandma assumedly, and found a dress she really liked. My GF of 10 years is very down to earth and level headed. We finally decided to get married later this year for a few reasons, and she's feeling a lot of phantom pressure to do things a certain way. It's not like there is an overbearing mom or catty friends applying pressure or expectations. It's just the whole idea is overwhelming and filled to the brim with opportunities to make a decision you might end up regretting later, or forever. I've taken a more active role in narrowing down options instead of asking her to pick a perfect solution out of 5 million possible options. It's helped somewhat, but there is still a lot of pressure on her, seemingly out of nowhere, to make a series of decisions that all depend upon the first few big decisions that are weighing heavily on her ass. All this to say, I can see how this kind of stuff could turn a normal woman into a lunatic. These types of events tend to bring latent family and friend drama to the forefront, and emotions are high before shit even really gets started. My guess is that a lot of the Bridezillas were actually lovely people who calmed down and returned to being lovely people after the stress of the wedding stuff is removed. My co-worker married a crazy Bridezilla. I'll try to just hit the bullet points of what happened leading up to, during, and after the wedding, but it's still a lot. The moment he proposed, she lost her sex drive. According to him, she also basically stopped acting like the woman he fell in love with and started acting like her real self. Which was batshit crazy. A week after he proposed, she quit her job because her full-time job was now planning the wedding. The wedding was horrible. I'm getting there. She had a fight with his mother because the bride demanded the groom's mom pay for half the wedding but get zero input and wasn't allowed to contribute to the guest list, which was 95% the bride's friends and family. Brit, who was 30 years old, subsequently egged her future Mill's house. When bride and groom had a spat about the egging, he went to the work the next day and she shaved her head and sent him video of her screaming and sobbing as she buzzed her hair off in the bathroom. I worked with him. He showed me the video when he said he had to leave, and I strongly urged him to have her assessed by a psychiatrist. He made a dumb joke about sexy with a crazy girl is the best kind and I pitied him. Wedding was in a pool clubhouse in summer. It was much too small for the 150 plus people they invited. Someone forgot to turn the AC on until after the place was packed. A lifeguard showed up in a swimsuit to turn it on, but it did little given it was already sweltering. 2 rows of chairs in the clubhouse were ribboned off with reserved signs on them, so no one sat in them. They were later occupied by the 6-seated bridesmaids, leaving about a dozen chairs open once the wedding started. The one groomsman stood by the groom and didn't sit. Elderly people were left standing or reduced to sitting on the floor as there was no way to get to the chairs once the ceremony started. Bride showed up 90 minutes late, having been unhappy with her hair, wig, and makeup, so she took it all off and did it herself, so all the guests are standing for the 1.5 hours waiting for her. Groom was literally standing at the altar sweating his ass off in a wool suit in the South's high summer, and was clearly not sure if she would show up. He looked like he felt sick. When bride showed up, she burst into the clubhouse, marched down the aisle and snapped at the officiant to hurry up and get started. During the prayer, while the religious groom had his head bowed, she turned to wave at everyone. I don't pray, so I was looking up. Then she told her mother to go get her some water. She drank a bottle of water during the prayer and kept grinning and waving at people in attendance, paying zero mind to her groom in front of her. When the ceremony was over, tables were crammed into the clubhouse and apparently only family and immediate friends of the bride had seats at tables. The rest of us were going to be standing outside during the reception. So I didn't see a dance, a speech, the cake cut, nothing. The food was served outside, in the southern July heat with bugs everywhere. The bride made the groom go get her food over and over. He meekly stood in line with the other 150 people, until people insisted he go sit and let them get food. Nope, she told him to get food, so he said he had to be the one to get her food. She never left her table, never greeted any of her guests. Apparently they had a massive fight as they were leaving the following day for the honeymoon. Bride laying all the failures of the wedding she planned at him and his mom's feet. She threw his luggage out of the car and tried to drive to the airport by herself, but he had their tickets and jumped on the hood to stop her from driving off in his car. He got fired about a month after the wedding because he kept showing up late, leaving early, and leaving in the middle of day, usually because she called him with some crisis. 1 year after the wedding, I got a thank you note for my wedding gift, which was signed by just the bride with a note that said, "As you may have heard, Ryan and I have had bumpy start in our first year as a married couple, and we are separated now. Thanks for the lovely gift." The divorced a couple months later. She left me 3 months later. After the wedding and vacation was over, I told her we need to pay the debt we just accumulated. She said she didn't have much on her credit card and could pay it off in a couple of months if I picked up some of her bills. I agreed, and 3 months later she had her credit card paid off. She told me she wanted a divorce. We had a budget for the wedding and should have had no debt at the end, but in the last few weeks before the wedding she suddenly had to spend a ton of money on wedding shit I had never even heard of before. And when I say she spent a ton of money, it came out of my pocket. Edit. I feel I should give a little more explanation about how I ended up with the wedding debt, since several people have asked why it wasn't split evenly and about annulment. We didn't have any kids and only had assets we brought into the relationship. By taking the debt, I was able to prevent her from hiring a lawyer to represent her in the divorce, which would have forced me to do the same and cost significantly more than the debts. The debt in itself was about $8,000, which isn't a crippling amount but is still a lot of money to me. That was just the amount over budget on the wedding. She also had a car loan which I, thankfully, did not end up with. She comes from an upper middle class family and has a trust, which is not something I could have gone after in the divorce. I make nearly double in income of what she does. A lawyer would have advised her to claim alimony. She wouldn't have gotten a lot, but she would have gotten something. The judge asked her repeatedly if she wanted to claim alimony. Annulment is very uncommon where we live. We looked into it but did not meet the criteria for one. Instead we went to a quickie divorce lawyer who just puts paperwork together and then we had to do everything else. I luckily work with lawyers and was able to discuss things with them. None of them are divorce lawyers, but they gave me a general idea of how things would work out if it got ugly. My cousin was married to one. He comes from a very not wealthy area and has become successful himself after moving out of his hometown. His wife was extremely wealthy, even could say excessively. They married after a year of knowing each other, and boy was it a surprise to hear about the wedding plans. They spent plus $250K on the wedding, including catering by 5-7 different restaurants. Their food was from different cultures and cooked in front of you. Think almost hibachi buffet style. They even had servers in tailed suits and white gloves serving Taco Bell after midnight once everyone was drunk. Once they got married, she was spending more money than he could make. She was getting mad because he wasn't making enough, while she wasn't working and they hadn't had kids. They got divorced, and she gave him the ultimatum of getting his ring back or keeping the dog. He kept the dog. Her sister, a lawyer, helped her file a restraining order on him and they haven't spoken since. Fuck her, but man did he dodge a bullet. Edit. I forgot to say they finished the divorce papers exactly 1 year and 1 day after their wedding. Edit 2. I never expected my first award would be the famous wholesome. Cheers. A bit of a change up, not a Bridezilla, but a groomzilla. A friend of my father was remarrying. It was both his and the bride's second time around, both in their early 40s, and an arranged marriage. Think Indian Orthodox Muslim stuff. The guy was an utter groomzilla. He demanded that every event be at top-notch hotels with obscenely expensive catering and hired string quartets and whatnot for the entertainment. Mostly paid out of the bride's family's pocket, I might add. The parties on the nights leading up to the main wedding event were opportunity enough for him to make a rather public ass of himself, talking at the top of his voice and showboating the entire time. But the kicker came the next day, when the bride was missing from her own wedding's reception. Obviously it was very odd and conspicuous, and the few relatives from her side made some non-committal excuses about her not feeling well, etc. Turns out, this fucker had divorced the poor woman right after he'd had his wedding night fun. He said that he didn't like her enough, and that's an almost literal quote. So he gave her the triple divorce thing, and that was it. The marriage was officially over before the festivities even ended.